With all the increased attention in the media on concussions, we felt it was important to get you the most recent researched evidence on what is a concussion, what are the signs of a concussion, and then how do you return to sport once you've figured out you've had a concussion. This is the first part of a 3-part series that we're going to present to explain all of the aspects of concussion and how to manage it properly. So the first thing is, what is a concussion? A concussion is a blow to the head, and it comes from either a direct force or an indirect force. First off, I'll talk about the direct force. The direct force is actually getting hit in the head. So it can be something like boxing, getting hit in the head of the face and the person gets knocked out. It can be a hit from a shoulder pad to a head in, let's say, NHL, which is a rage right now as far as in the media about reducing the number of hits to the head. And so those are direct blows, and you actually get trauma to the brain, and it's actually a brain injury. The second type of concussion you can get is from an indirect blow. Now that's the more confusing one, where you'll get someone who comes off the ice as an athlete and says, well, I just ran into somebody, but man, I'm dizzy. Or you'll be someone that's driving in a car, and you're driving along and you get hit, and your head actually doesn't hit anything in the accident, but then you have a headache and you're confused and you don't know what's going on. That's actually concussion from the movement of your body and your head, and inside your brain moves around and slams against the side of your skull, which then creates a brain injury and creates a concussion. So how do you know you've had a concussion? Well, the first most obvious sign is you get knocked out. You don't have to be knocked out to have a concussion, however, but if the person is knocked out, you know they've had a brain injury and it's actually slowed their body functions down to the point where they can't stand up anymore or they lose consciousness completely. There are also a lot of little tiny signs that you can pick up on from an athlete returning to the bench from the field or the ice, or you just happen to have a kid that falls on monkey bars at school and sort of says to you, man, my head's sore and I've got some ringing in my ears. So the signs you want to look for are headache, dizziness, blurred vision, nausea, ringing in your ears, confusion. We've all heard the story of the football player, you know, falling down and getting hit, and they get up and go to the other team's huddle. They're obviously a little confused. You can also get little minor things like inability to process, so that all of a sudden your son or daughter can't do math and can't figure out what 2 + 2 is, or can't count backwards. And those are things that we'll use as tests to see if the person's actually suffered a concussion. And the big point about this that I want all of the athletes who are watching this, as well as parents, is that if there's a sign of concussion, it's important to mention it and get the person to an appropriate medically qualified individual, because more and more we're finding that repeat concussions, if you've had a concussion, you're more likely to have a second concussion, and there is a thing called second impact syndrome, which will potentially be life-threatening if you have a concussion on top of another concussion. The other thing they're finding is if you've had one concussion, you're more likely to have a second one, and if you have more than 3, you're actually going to end up with some cognitive impairment from those concussions. So it's really important to be honest, to talk about it, tell people if you're getting those symptoms so that we can manage it correctly and end up getting you back into action as soon as we can.